I guess we can go ahead and get started. Looks like we've got about all we can fit in here. So thank you all for coming. It's supposed to have been a rainy afternoon, but looks like it's going to be sunny after all, at least for a while. So I'm Bob Penman, and here's my contact information. I've got my email and my phone number, and I'm at 101 in the main building, which is at the base of the tower, and that's in with the rest of the graduate school, which is so it's a location that most of you will probably visit, at least at some point. And feel free to stop by and say hi. I like visitors. I encourage you to make use of my services if you get stuck. Of course, by the time this workshop's over, you'll all be masters of the template, and it'll all work fine. But if you get home and something's not working quite right, or you can't quite remember how to do something, don't spend a lot of time on it. I'd say if you don't, spend maybe 30 minutes. And if you can't figure it out by then, just put it aside and go do something else, or even better, get a good night's sleep. And then in the morning, call me or come by or email, and I'm sure we can fix it. Usually, if there's a problem, it takes like a minute or two to show you how to do it. We always get at least a couple of people every semester that will come stumbling in the morning, all red-eyed, wild-haired, and say, I was up all night trying to get the patient numbers to work or something. So don't be that person. Just give it a rest and then come see me and we'll make it right. So for the templates themselves, UT has always had a certain way that they want a thesis or a dissertation from UT to look. Margins of a certain size and page numbers in a certain position, and sometimes Arabic, sometimes Roman, all these 1,000 little rules. And they were published in a set of format guidelines, which we still have on our website. So if you want to be a real do-it-yourselfer, you can still do it all yourself. But if you use the templates, it'll make your life a lot easier because they encapsulate most of all the rules we could fit in there, and does a lot of the work for you. So this is the link where you'll download them, which I happen to have already open. And open. There it is. This is the link. It's got my face on it. Back when I had short hair. And so we've got, this is a link on the main graduate school page, which is also a good page that you may want to visit. The page just before this that it's linked to is this deadlines and forms page. Up here it's got a link for masters and for doctors. It's got a checklist of all the, where to upload your paper once it's ready. Hey, come on in. And what physical pages to turn in. We don't want, the whole thing. You don't have to make a bound copy. Just a few pages. And this lists what they are and when to give it to us, all the deadlines, things, the date things have to be in. But there's a link over here for Thesis and Dissertation Templates, which is that one. And we have versions for Mac, PC, depending on the version of Word you have. If you pick the wrong one, it's not a problem. They're all basically the same. The first time you open it, if it's not your version, you might get a message about opening in compatibility mode, but after that it'll be just fine. When you download this template, it's a package, it's a zip file, and in the file there's 4 templates. So we'll go over each one and we're going to use it. 3 of them correspond to the parts of your document. There's one we call the front matter, which is all the title page and signature page, and abstract, and all that stuff. Then there's one for the body, which is your actual paper. And then there's one that we call the back matter, all the stuff at the end, appendices, references, and all that stuff goes at the end. So we'll go over those. The fourth one is one that you won't really technically use per se, but it's good to look at. That is, let's see, what is that? This one's called the chapter template, and it's actually a sample chapter. Thank you. And it's there just to kind of show you what we're aiming for. So it's good to kind of look at it and get it in your mind. These all have the same margins and everything is set. Things like chapter titles, we like them to look this way. If you need to do a certain style, like APA style or Chicago style, feel free to do that. We're not so picky that we force you to do it this way, but this is kind of the overall look that we're going for. There's chapter titles, subheadings, sub-subheadings, sub-sub-subheadings, and you'll notice they're labeled in these heading styles, heading 2, heading 3, 4, 5. That's the name of the style that this text is in. Word comes with a bunch of styles. Hey, come in. And so we've tweaked some of those and added some new ones to do what we want to do. Has anybody actually used styles before? Very few people ever do, but they're a part of Word. They're basically like macro. You can program a style to do any of the formatting things that Word does. Center things, bold things, make it a certain size. You can encode that in a style, and then when you apply that style to something you have selected, it'll do all that formatting in a blink of an eye. So
in this case, the style that, it's the first part, right, of the, before the colon, that's what it's supposed to look like?
that would be your actual
Okay.
chapter
Just to
name.
confirm.
Yeah, and that can be, you don't even have to use the word chapter if you don't want to. You can say like number 1, or just call it whatever you want to call it. Let's see. So we'll go over all these styles and where and how to use them here in a minute. What we'll do is take a sample document, and then I'll show you how to put it into the templates. So there's a sample table. It's got its little caption down there. It's in the heading 7 style. And the captions can be above or below. Either way is fine with us. Try to do them all the same. There's a figure and an illustration, which raises the question, what's a figure and what's an illustration? These two things are just there in case you need them. If you have two different kinds of images that you want to distinguish between, you could call one a figure and one an illustration. If you have like maps and photographs, you could call all the maps figures, all the photographs illustrations, or vice versa. Or you can just call everything a figure if it doesn't matter. Sample text, there's like a little text quote, there's a reference style, all these little styles. But this is it's just here as an illustration, just to show you kind of what we're wanting. So what we'll do is start with at the back of the document and work forward, because it's a little easier that way, kind of work into it. So we'll start with the back matter template, which is this one. So if this was all one big document, your document would have ended just on the page just before this. Then here's the back matter. If you have an appendix, it would go here. Some people do, some people don't. If you don't, you can just delete that. And for the appendix, you can put pretty much anything in there you want. We don't have any particular formatting rules, other than we just don't want it sticking out into the margins. That's the main thing we want. People use, just raw data, lines and lines of that, or sample questionnaires that they've given people. It could just be anything. You could put all your images at the end if you want. Some people have them in the body of the text as they're referred to. Some people put them all in an appendix. Either way is fine. Next would be a glossary. Again, if you have one or if you want one. It's another optional page, and no particular formatting rules on that. Then this is a required page. Some people have a list of references at the end of each chapter, and that's fine with us, but we don't require that, but you can have it if you want. But what we do require is an overall bibliography. You can call it bibliography or references or works cited, whatever you want, at the very end. And there's some sample entries. Again, if you have a particular style that they need to be in, you can have it in whatever style you need. Your committee may want you to do it a certain way. That's fine with us. Then the very, very last page is the Vita page, which is, it's not a resume, but it's kind of a conversational, here's my life. And this is another optional page, so you don't have to have one if you don't want to. It used to be a required page, but and the reason why it's now an optional page is be careful what you put in here. Don't put things like your mother's maiden name and your first pet's name, anything that's typically used as security questions, because people have, in the past, gone through these and done data mining and identity theft. So just be careful what you put in there. If you do have one, these 2 lines are required at the end. An address or an email. Email is usually better. Like in case someone 2 years from now reads this and wants to ask you a question, they can get a hold of you. And that's the back matter. Like if your document ended on page 99, this would be 100. It's all continuously numbered.
So the back matter is numbered?
It is page number. Yeah, the front matter has its own little special page number thing, and then the first page of your document will be page 1, and then just continuous from there all to the end.
Can your appendix be electronic instead of hard copy?
How do you mean electronic?
Like, can you just have a CD that includes all your appendices, or do you have to?
Well, it has to be all one big combined document. Is that what you're saying?
So you need a hard copy.
No, we don't. It used to be we required every student to turn in a bound copy, but that's no longer true. All we want is the PDF.
Okay, so you can have your appendix as an electronic
Oh, yeah.
CD in your dissertation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. For the body, what's usually easiest is this one. This is the template called the master template. It's basically just one page, and it's got some little text in there. You can delete it after you read it. A couple of options you can, if you haven't started writing your paper yet, I would recommend using this to start it with. Just start typing away in there. If you have already started, which most of you probably have, you can take what you have written in a Word document and paste it into this. And I'll show you how to do that and how to apply these different styles and make it look nice. All that stuff. We'll do a sample. But basically, this is all there is to the master template. You can, if you're, some people have a lot of image-heavy chapters. So if your file's like really big, what you might want to do is put chapter 1 in here and save that. Then open it again, put chapter 2 in there, so you can be working on it chapter by chapter. It'll have to be all combined eventually, but if it's easier for you to do it in separate documents, that's fine too. So the big template, or not big, but major, I guess, is this one. This is the front matter. This is the one that has all most of the little picky rules and stuff. So we'll spend a little more time on this one. So the first page we did is the copyright page, which just by virtue of having this technically copyrights your paper. If you have something in there that you're especially worried about, like if you've got patent ideas or poetry or screenplay or something that you definitely don't want other people appropriating, for a little extra layer of protection, you can register your document with the Library of Congress. I think it's like a $50 fee or something like that. But that officially copyrights it with them. So if you feel you need that extra level of legal protection, you can do that too. Most people don't, but it's there. In this front matter, everything that's in a bracket means it's something that needs to be replaced. So in this case, your official name, which is not necessarily what you think it is. It may not be what's on your driver's license. It may not be what comes up when you log into UT Direct. What it is your name as the registrar's office has it. And I believe they get it from your initial application to UT. So however that was, that's how this will need to be. If you're not sure what it is, you can call the registrar, go by, or you can check with your graduate coordinator, or you can call me and I can look it up. Anything like that. But it does need to be that form. Sometimes it's the middle initial, sometimes it's full middle name. It could be anything. Years, the year you're graduating. This is another major page. This is the signature page. This is the one your committee will sign off on, like if you're doing a defense or when your theses are ready, they're finally approved. I'm using the thesis template here. We have one for the dissertation also. It looks almost exactly the same. Just says dissertation up here and has more lines for committee members. Hey, come on in. Some people do a thesis, some do a report. Just delete the one that you're not doing. The thesis committee or the report committee in a couple of places there. And also your,
If this is going to be an electronic copy, how do we get supervisor signatures? Do we just scan that in?
no, so one of the few physical pages that we want is this page with the actual signatures. The one you upload will just be this one page without the signatures. Let's just keep your committee members' electronic signatures being out there on the web, and someone to abuse. Your official name again, same name from that first page. Title of your thesis. Then your committee members' names down here. And don't use any titles, not Dr. John Smith and not John Smith, PhD, but just John Smith. Some people have more or fewer than the standard number of committees members. Like if you had a third member, say on your thesis, this little block is basically a word table. So you could just go to the table thing and insert another line. They can sign under that. And same way you could delete one if you have too many. This is more useful maybe on the dissertation thing because they have 6 members. Some people have 5, some people have 7.
Why do you have to omit the PhD or doctoral? Why do you omit that?
I'm not real sure why that is, but it's just always been that way. This one also is important for another reason. We have to get this one, the signed version of it, into our office by the graduation deadline. So you want to be sure that all the formatting is right on it, particularly because if your committee members are going out of town or leaving on a trip the day after your defense, it may be hard to get a signature. So what I recommend is bringing at least this page by, or emailing it to me, it's fine too. And I can check it over just to make sure it's all 100% good before you run off with it to get signatures. So next is the title page. So the title of it again up here, then your official name again. And on this one, after your name, we want your previous degrees, and however many you've got. Like if you had a previous Bachelor of Arts, and if you also had a previous Master of Science, just keep adding them on.
Does it matter what order it comes in?
Not too much. We usually try to do the oldest one first.
Okay.
And a semicolon in between those.
And a semicolon in between as well. We'll take a comma, but we prefer a semicolon. Then whether you're doing a thesis or a report or a dissertation or a treatise, whatever you're doing, there's some required verbiage. Then down here will be the official name of the degree you're getting. A lot of times it will be Master of Arts, it could be Master of Science, especially in some of the sciences like engineering. They'll put a Master of Science in chemical engineering, which the chemical part is not the degree, it's your major. So the degree is just Master of Science in engineering. So a lot of times it's not obvious what your degree is. So if you're not sure what it is, check your graduate catalog or your graduate coordinator, or you can call me and I'll see what you're registered for. And then the month and year is not necessarily the month you're working on it, but this is the month of graduation. So it'll be either May or August or December of whatever year. And here's the dedication page, which is an optional page. You can put however you want to do, dedicate it to mom. And here's the acknowledgements page, also an optional page. You'll notice in this one it says if you don't want the dedication page, don't delete the section break below. This one says don't delete the section break above if you delete this page. So there's a section break in there somewhere, and you can tell that there is one because these first 2 pages they count for page number, but they don't have a visible page number. So there's the dedication. There's a page number below here somewhere. In the acknowledgements, the page numbers start showing up as lowercase Roman numerals. So the way, if you do want to delete one or other of these, and you're not sure where the section break is, there's this little symbol up here called show and hide. When it's on, you can see that there's the section break. It'll show you returns and tabs and spaces, a lot of the normally invisible characters. So like if you didn't want the dedication page, delete everything down to that, but not including it. Take it out, there, which will leave a blank page. So on the page before, there's a page break at the end, so you can delete that page break. That moves the section break up to replace it. Now there's no blank page. And it's all, and so this will be now page 4.
Yeah, can you just shut up one more time?
Sure. So normally, it goes through these first 4 pages down to the dedication, number, and then it'll start showing up on the acknowledgements page. If you want to delete one, turn on the show and hide around here. Go to dedication, delete everything down to that section break, and then delete the page break above, which will bring that up. And now there's not a, so there won't be a blank page in there anymore. If you do delete it, what it'll usually do is make the page numbers show on those first few pages, which you don't want. If you do delete it, I can show you how to get it back in there.
If you do a dedication page, is it preferable that it's like 1 page or not too long, or are there any?
Preferably not too long, but
Yeah.
Usually they're pretty short, it's too long, but you can make it longer if you want, if you have a lot of people that dedicate to it. We see, usually on the acknowledgements can be fairly long.
Okay.
Yeah.
They call for little people.
Yeah, what's the big difference between those two things?
The dedication is just, I'm dedicating this to my parents who made it possible, or my husband or my wife. The acknowledgements, I want to thank Professor so-and-so for finding raw data or something like that. Thank my daughter for being so patient with me. The next big page is the abstract. So the title up here again, your official name again. So on that other page, it was your name and then your previous degrees. And this one, it's your name and the degree you're getting. So like, whatever you're getting, Master of Arts, or Doctor of Philosophy, whatever it is, but the abbreviation. Supervisor, this will be also the supervisor name without titles. Some people have an additional co-supervisor. You could either say supervisors, the first one, comma, the next one, or you can, on the line below, you can say co-supervisor, so on and so on. Then the abstract, which it says don't go over 350 words. We don't really count it. Just try not to be too verbose. And since it starts so low on the page, it usually will flow over onto another page, and that's fine. So here's the sample table of contents. This is generated from that sample chapter that we looked at a little while ago. So it has all the entries from it. And really, probably the best part of using the templates is that if you use these styles, like put the chapters in the heading 2 style, subheadings, whatever, it will build this table of contents for you. So you don't have to look it up and say, well, that's page 3, you type it in. So that'll save you a lot of time right there, and we'll show you how to do that. There's a list of tables. Oh, yeah.
So what if I didn't do that? And I already have the chapters and everything, but my index is it's undoable.
It's a mess. You could either, go through the document and put things in those styles, or just, if that's too much, just do it. Just type them in manually.
What are the styles again?
I'll show you. We're going to do a sample document and I'll show you how to use those styles and then how to build the table of contents from it.
All right.
So it might be easy. It depends on the situation. It might be easier to do that. So there's a list of tables, if you have tables. Some people do, some people don't. You can just delete this page if you don't. But if you do, then there's a style for those, and it'll build the list of tables for you also. List of figures page, if you have figures. And list of illustrations page, if you have illustrations. And then, so this is down through like page 9, or whatever it turns out to be, in Roman numerals. Then at the very end, there's this blank page 1 in Arabic numerals. So this is where your actual document will start.
Just to be clear, can we put all the tables that can on the document, or?
All the tables? Oh, yeah, you can either have the tables in the document as they're mentioned, or you can just put them all, like, you can put them in the appendix. Whichever is easier for you.
Yeah, if I change some of the heading styles to match the APE style,
That's fine.
will I be able to do it automatically?
Yeah, you'll still do it on it, as long as it's got that same name. Let's see. One thing on the list of illustrations, it also mentions, like we saw before, well, maybe that mentioned it, but there's a section break at the end of this page also that you don't want to delete, because that's what controls the next page being one in Arabic numbers. So if you didn't have illustrations, you wanted to delete those, turn the little show hide thing on, and there it is. So you can delete everything above that. Just trying to delete the section break. So what we'll do is we'll create a little sample thesis, and I'll show you how to get there. One of the most common things, well, first let's get some text in here. Here's a little trick that if you ever need to do a workshop of your own someday and need some random text, you can use this command here, equal rand and some number, and it will give you that number of paragraphs of text. So give you something to play with.
Wow.
It just made that up.
Equal sign, rand, and then some number in parentheses. So a little known word trick. So it's just that easy to write a thesis. So,
For the illustration, can you retitle that and list out other things like?
yeah, you can go on something else. If you had formulas, or something, you could have a list of formulas. So one thing you'll probably encounter when you're going to put your stuff in the template is your margins may or may not match the margins of the template. And through experience, we found that the best way to do it is set your margins first to match the template, and then copy and paste it into there. So the way to see what you have, there's page layout margins, there's a little custom margins thing, so you can reset it to something. What we have right now is half-inch margins all around, top, bottom, left, and right, and a header of 0.5 and a footer of 0.5. What we want to change it to match the template, and all the templates are in this, is instead of 0.5, we want it to be 1.25. Put all those. And then for the header and footer, the header's fine at 0.5, but the footer should be 1.2. And the purpose of that is to give an inch of white space below the page number, which is what we want. So when you say OK, that allows it there, shrinks it in.
What was the value for header?
I'm sorry?
What was the value for header?
The header should be just the same as it was, 0.5. I think that's fairly standard in Word. It would probably be that. And the footer, 1.2. So here's our document. It's getting there. So now that the margins are matching, you can select it all. Control A, or there's a select all button. We'll copy it. And we can paste it into the master template, which is fine if you want to work on it there. It'll have to be combined with that front matter eventually. So we'll paste it there at that blank page 1 at the end of the front matter, just to save time. So it was. This is it. So there's, the end of our front matter. There's that blank page 1. So we'll paste it in there. So now it's connected. And this will probably happen to you. Word tends to get confused the first time you paste something in there. So this was page 1, now it's page 10. So it remembered it was supposed to change to Arabic style, but it forgot to start at 1. If that does happen to you, the fix is go to Insert, Page Number, then Format Page Number. And there's a setting there for where the numbering continues from the previous section, which is what it's doing, but we want to set it back to start at 1. So that's page 1 again. And that it should stay there from here on.
And should be double spaced?
I'm sorry?
Should be double spaced?
I think it will be. When you paste it in, it may come back across as double spaced, or at least 1.5. If it doesn't, like this did, what we'll do, here we go. And so this is a good point to talk about the styles. There's a list of styles up here that Word comes with. This little window up here gives a list of some of the styles. It doesn't show them all. If you need to see all the styles, and you may want to see more than it gives you here, there's this little button, hard to see off to the right. If you click that, it gives you a more expanded list of the styles. And in Word in general, if you click on a particular text, the style that it's in will be highlighted over here. There it is. So right now we're in the normal style, which is Word's default. What we have is there's a style called text, which is what we like the document to be in. You don't have to use it, but it helps. So what we'll do is select all of our text here. Then we'll click on this text style, which will apply that text to what we have selected. And that makes it double spaced and look nice. So let's say this is your document. So you'll probably have something like a chapter title up here. We'll call it Chapter 1. Let's do that. So it has its own style. And one thing I did point out on this page where you download the templates, down at the bottom there's a user's guide that it'll have a lot of what I'm talking about here. But the most useful thing on it, it looks like this. It's a PDF. It's got all this stuff. At the very end, there is an Appendix B, which lists the various styles and where to use them. So for chapter titles, or main things like appendices or something like that, that should be in the heading 2 style. So
You can change your font, right?
yeah, it comes as I forget it this time, but you can make it try to pick something common so that other people can read it well. So the chapter title should be in the heading 2 style, so we'll select that. Look over here for heading 2. There it is. Then when we click on that, it holds it, centers it, makes it a little bit larger. Let's put in a subheading. And you can use ONE or you can use the number 1. Either way is fine too. So on our little sheet, subheadings below the chapter level, the first level should be 3. If you have a subheading below that, it would be a 4. Below that would be a 5. So this would be a heading 3 because it's the first level of it. So we'll select it, look over here for heading 3. It does that. It makes it look like it's in all capitals, but it's not really. Let's put one more in. This is subheading 2. So it's still a heading 3 because it's the same level of subheading. So select that, make it a heading 3. So this also has the effect of it standardizes the look of your paper. All the same level headings will look the same. But the big thing is if we now go back up here to the table of contents, now that we've got some stuff in that heading style, I kind of aim usually for the center of it, but you click on it, right click on it, you'll get this pop-up menu, and when you say update field, Word will look through your document for anything that's in those heading styles and build itself. We'll make another,
Could you do that one more time?
yeah, just, let's add one more thing and I'll show you.
Thank you.
So like if you wanted a subheading in there, we'll put one in here. So subheadings are heading 3. Subheading will be a heading 4. So this will be a 4. We'll select it. Heading 4. It looks like that. So at any point, we can come back up here, right-click on the existing table of contents, say Update Field, and anytime after the first time you do it, it'll come up with this extra little choice. You can either update just the page numbers or the entire table. Usually you want to do the entire table, especially in this case because we've added something. But when you say OK, there's our subheading. So, good stuff. So as you go through and do your chapters and subheadings, you can always come back up here and update and see, make sure you've got things in the right level that you want it to be, and that sort of thing. So that'll save you a lot of time. Let's see. Let's put in table. Just put a little something in there. So from our little appendix, our cheat sheet here, table titles should be a heading 7. So not the table itself, but just the caption should be a heading 7. So we'll highlight our caption. We'll go over here for heading 7, heading 7. So it doesn't look very different, but now Word knows it's a heading style. So you can come back up here to the list of tables, right-click on it, update field, and there it is. And this happens sometimes if the entry is fairly short. You'll notice it a lot if you do a Vita, because it's only a short little word. The thing that generates the dots in that line is working off of tab stop. So if the entry is not quite long enough, it won't trigger those dots. So if it does that to you, you can come in here and either put in a tab or 2 or 3 spaces, and that'll generate the dots. Let's see. So for tables, we want, usually if a table, they're usually not all that long, but if you have a fairly long one, if it will fit all on one page, we like it to be all on one page. If that means we need to drop this down to the next page to get it to all fit and not break across pages, that's fine with us. We don't mind white space at the bottom of the preceding page. Achieves that goal. If it is just way too long to fit on one page, let's add a few more lines in here just a little. A few more rows. So if it does, well, you know, in this case, we just break it down and it would fit, but let's assume it's like really long. So what we would want here is at the top of this page, have a little caption that says Table 1 Continued. And you can't really get in there to do that. Since it's all one big table, Word won't let you get in there to type that. What you would have to do is usually either the last line of that page or the first line of this page. Usually this one works better. There's a table command called split table that will actually break it into 2 parts. And now you can get your cursor in there. Something like that. So right now, it's all one continuous table, and Word will let you click in there in that empty space to type anything. So just pick either that row or this row. In Table Layout Tools, there's a split table command. That breaks it into 2, and then you can type in the caption.
Is it okay to insert tables as PDFs instead, so like it's in here?
Sure, yeah, you do. Yeah, like it was an image or something, yeah, that's fine. It doesn't have to be a literal table. So.
How about tables in landscape?
That's good too. That's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah, do that. So sometimes a table is really wide, and in order to fit it on the page, you have to smush it in so much it's unreadable. One option on that is to put it on the landscape page. And the way to do that is we'll insert 2 section breaks. And that way, the table itself will be on its own section, and you can format it to be sideways. So right at the beginning here, there's, let's see, you think it's under insert breaks, it used to be, but in the newer versions, it's page layout breaks. And so section break, next page is what we want. It's a combination of section break and page break. So we'll put one at the beginning of the table, and we'll have to do another one at the end of that table, or where the document picks back up. That way it'll be its own section, and we can rotate it without affecting the section above it or below it. So now that it's its own section, there's page layout, orientation, landscape. So now the page before it's still portrait, this one's landscape, and the page after it's back to portrait.
What about margins?
The margins should still be the same. If it's like a really hard to do table, the margins are normally 1.25 inches. We'll let you go down to 1 inch if it'll help a little bit. You can also reduce the font size of the table as long as it's still readable to help it get everything on there.
Previously, when you were showing us how to split the table, how would adding table 1 continue affect the table of contents?
The continuation notice you don't have to put in that heading style. It's the initial caption. That's the continuation thing doesn't have to show up. But what it probably could do, yep. So remember how when we first inserted it, it messed up the page numbering. In this case, it went from 2, there should be 3. Now it's where it started back over at 1. So it did just the opposite of what the other thing did. So you have to do that same thing, but in reverse. Insert page number, format page number. In this case, instead of start at 1, continue the numbering from that previous section. So that's right. And because we did 2 section breaks, they did it twice. So this is starting back at 1. So we'll do that same thing. And it's all continuous again. Whenever you insert a section break, it kind of freaks out sometimes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if my table is too long and I'm splitting it into 2 tables, and I need to add like a note under the table in each page, can I do that?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's put in an image. We'll call this one a figure. And the way you can insert an image, probably the easiest way is just insert picture, then navigate to wherever your image file is. In my case, whenever you come to my workshops, I always include an image of the emperor, so we'll use some really, and there it is. So when you put an image in, it may come out at not a size that you want, like this one's kind of big, but if you click on it, you'll get these little grabber points on the corners and the side, and if you hover over that, it turns into a little two-headed arrow, and you can resize it, whatever you want to do. And I would recommend grabbing it by the corners, because if you grab it by the sides, it will resize it, but it may distort what you have. It may not matter for your picture, but something to keep in mind. And since it's a figure, we'll look on back at our little cheat sheet. Figure titles should be heading 8. So we'll put the caption in heading 8. Go back up to our list of figures now. There it is. Do that same thing, right click, update field, and there it is. If I wanted this to be an illustration, you could title it illustration 1, you can put the caption in the heading 9, and then update the list of illustrations, and it would show up there.
So typically, I have really wordy figures, figure captions. So I've noticed there's abbreviated versions.
That's a good one.
So when you go in, we talked before, and you mentioned you go in and pretty much delete the extra text. But you wouldn't want to do that until right before you're done,
Yeah,
because it would just keep
It'll just
updating.
update it again.
Okay.
Yeah, what she's saying is, like if you had a really long caption for your figure or a table, even if you only put the first part of it in that style, like heading 7 or heading 8, it'll treat the whole thing as a set of 7 or 8. So all that verbiage will show up in the list of tables or list of figures. If you don't want it to all be there, go ahead and generate it, but then you can edit it down once it's in this list of tables. You can take some of it out if you don't want it.
That's like the last thing you do.
Yeah, save that for the last, because if you need to update it again, it'll just go back to the way it was. So, yeah.
I have a question about, which we can say if it's off topic, but including images, do dissertations count as publications in that regard, where you need to own the copyright to the image in order to insert it into a dissertation?
I think there's some level of fair use. If you don't just use image after image after image, I think it's okay. There's a copyright office, I think, here in the library that can give you more technical advice on that, but I think it should be fine.
But for example, yeah, if you were talking about, say, the reel and the pulling and the painting there, you don't need to contact the museum in order to put it in.
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
I have a question about endnotes. So my dissertation is basically 3 distinct chapters, and in each chapter I have endnotes for each chapter. So should it go at the end of each chapter, or in the appendix, or?
You may want it at the end of each chapter.
Okay.
The way to do that is, let's see, under the references, let's see, there's a little, like we had with styles, there's this little tiny button off to the right of footnotes where you can specify how you want them to do. So like for endnotes, normally they all show up at the end of the document. You can set that to be at the end of the section, and then have a section break in between each chapter, and they'll show up at the end of that chapter.
What is it that is showing up?
List of like endnotes.
Okay.
Instead of showing them all clumped together, then if you have section breaks, you can tell them just to show up at the end of each section, for that section. Is that what you're?
Yes.
So will it then create the full one at the end as well for you?
No, you'd have to probably generate that separately.
Yeah, and that just brings up a question about footnotes. Is there a specific style, or is the default word
So
so?
default's fine with this, and you can make it look pretty much however you want.
Okay.
What else? So like, if this was the end of our chapter,
Sorry, one more question. So can I have endnotes and footnotes at the same time in the same chapter?
yeah,
Okay.
just insert a footnote or insert an endnote. I think that works all right. So if this was the end of our first chapter, we want each chapter to start at the top of a new page. So it would work if you just return down to the top of the page and you start typing. The drawback to that is if then you go back up in chapter 1 and add some text or delete some text, it'll move up and down with it, so it may not start at the top of the page anymore. So what I recommend on that is insert a page break. So if you, at the end of the first chapter, then whatever you type down here will always start at the top, no matter what you do.
Do you insert it at the bottom of the page or at the top of the page?
Just anywhere on that page. It'll automatically go to the top of the new page, wherever you insert it. Is that what you're? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just did it at the end of, at the bottom of that previous page.
Defaults the font, the same font size, font 12 is. On the default for the endnotes, the font is size 12. It seems a little large to me.
You can get it. It can be smaller.
To 10.
Yeah, as long as it's readable. Let's see. So at the end, once you're happy with your document and your committee's happy with it, everybody likes it. One thing you'll probably notice also, if you're sending your document to your committee members for them to review, they may come back and say, hey, this figure and this caption are on 2 different pages, you need to fix that. But it looks fine on yours. And that's because looking at it in different versions of Word or Mac versus PC can introduce all sorts of little discrepancies. And so for that reason, the way we want you to submit your final document is not as a Word document, but as a PDF. Because at least in theory, the PDF will look always the same on the computer. And it used to be a really tedious process to save a PDF, or create a PDF. Anymore, it's just a matter of picking a location, and then instead of a Word document, save it as a PDF. Sometimes on a Mac, and it's only on some Macs, and I've never understood why, it will save it as like maybe separate documents, wherever there's a section break. It will save one section as a document, the next section is a document. If it does that to you, you can mail it to me, I can put it together, or I can save the PDF for you. Let's see. Also, going back to this, our graduate school webpage, here's the master's checklist. Any of these, either the master's or the doctorate, there's a link on here somewhere for the TDL submission website. This is the website where you'll upload your PDF. You don't have to bring a bound copy to us anymore. And then there's a list also of the physical pages that we do want. And that's about all I got. Do we have any other questions? If you think of something later, you can always come back.
So it's due uploaded by 3 p.m. on May 8th, but does this need to be, the format of it need to be signed off by you beforehand, or are you only checking it out?
We'll check it at some point after you upload it.
Yeah.
It's better if you get it checked beforehand, just it'll stave off all the last minute wording, and you'll have to worry about it over the summer.
So, and is there a recommended time to reach out to you if you want to check it with you, or if you get busier?
It will be busier. The closer we get to the deadlines, it'll get fairly hectic. So the earlier you can turn it in, the better, but we'll do it. I'll do it anytime.
I guess wasn't quite clear about the reference section. Did you say that if we included references at the end of each chapter, that you also have to have a reference section at the end of the entire document?
Some people want to have references at the end of each chapter, and we don't have any rule for or against that. But we do have a rule that you have to have a comprehensive references section at the very end.
All right.
Just to make life hard.
All right.
Is it better to have a split table or a continued table, or is it better to have perhaps a bunch of white space on the preceding page and then a whole table on the next page?
If it will fit on one page, it's best to just bring it on down and start on one page.
And then is that a section break?
I'll just do a page break there, unless it needs to be
Oh,
landscape.
right. Okay, thanks.
And this is more open-ended question, but what are the most common mistakes in terms of formatting that you see, or
What's more common is for images or tables to stick out into the margins, because we want it to stick out no further than the text does. So just try to shrink things. Also, one thing on the tables that might be useful. Let's see, where was I? What's my document? Right here. In case you've pasted in a table and it comes in sticking out and you want to resize it, you can do it manually, but what might help is it gives that little plus sign. If you right click on that, you get an option to auto fit to the window. That will usually bring it in. You still may have to tweak it a bit in the center, because sometimes it will compress the column, the words, you can't, it splits them across, but at least that'll get it in the right general area.
So going back to this reference thing, this comprehensive reference thing, can you have a reference section and then have sub-references for each chapter?
Yeah,
so
have like video references or journal references.
No, but like chapter 1 references, chapter 2 references, chapter. Oh, sweet. All right.
Yeah, so you can just
Now we're talking.
maybe copy and paste from each chapter and just paste them in.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So then instead of the numbering continuing all the way through, you could just have 1, 2,
Yeah,
whatever,
either way.
and then 1
Should be
thing.
fine for us, yeah.
multiple reference
Uh-huh.
ones.
And they don't have to be numbered if you don't want them to be. If they're not numbered, they should probably be alphabetical, but.
Sorry, back to endnotes, because I have endnotes for each chapter. So I need to make sure that these endnotes are for that chapter. Is there a way to specify that?
If you do that section break
Uh-huh.
in between, and then until you do endnotes by section, it'll just be the ones from that chapter.
Okay, thank you. Footnotes, not endnotes. So
Oh, footnotes, yeah.
footnotes by section, there is something.
It works for footnotes also.
Okay.
And you can have the footnotes either numbered continuously
I don't
throughout
want
the,
them.
or restart at one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, either way.
Okay.
That's one of the options on that little menu too, is restart each section or continue.
Okay.
So this auto back to window is to observe the margin?
That's right.
Okay, is there like a style for the image itself? Like should it be centered?
You can have it centered or off to the left. Try to do them more or less the same way throughout. It's not a big thing. You can do that.
Could you show me how to insert a footnote?
You already want to say there. It's under references, insert footnote.
If you have a chapter that's also a journal article, is there any particular way that that should be acknowledged at the start of the
So it's
chapter?
like something you've written, published somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. You can certainly use that as a chapter. You'll want to have a footnote on the first page of it, something like, portions of this chapter have been previously published as blah, blah, blah. And it needs to be slightly different, because the journal article will be copyrighted the way it is. So this one needs to be, even if it's just a very slight difference, just to make it.
And by slightly different, do you mean like actual textual differences, or
Yeah,
is
just
just
make-
putting it into the formatting necessary for this enough usually?
Well, it'll need to be in our formatting, but even just like a word or two here and there
Okay.
is enough to just make it a little bit
And
different.
if you have co-authors, but obviously you've done all the work, really.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you should say, like, as the author, I did most of this and they contributed this or that? The other authors?
You can, we don't really have a rule on that.
All right, thank you.
But if you get home and think of something else, you can always call me or come by or email me, and I'll be there for you.